Hello? Rescue hooks to rescue, Mayday! Get ahead, West. Fast Mayday, what's your location? Get the panel out of here, hurry up! We need radio silence, baby. Water in that 2.5 inch line. 48 inch water in a 2.5 inch line. To the rope, to the rope. 35 in the rear, 35 in the rear.
Welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast. Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of the Emergency Traffic Podcast, where we review firefighter line of duty death reports and discuss the factors and prevention recommendations to learn from these tragedies. This week, it's our second July episode. It's late, but we got it completed. Episode number 78. We are going across the pond to Edinburgh, Scotland, where in July of 2009, a firefighter died during a stubborn basement or cellar fire in a local pub. Ironically, in July last year, we did an episode number 54 in the UK also, where a firefighter died in Manchester at a fire in a hair salon and hair products company, another commercial fire in July of 2013. In looking at my records, there does seem to be a bit of a trend in line of duty deaths in the UK in commercial structures. This week, I am joined by my cousin and retired fire chief Denny from Nova Scotia. It's the two old retired fire chiefs like Waldorf and Statler from the theater balcony in the Muppet Show. Our other regular co-hosts, Dirk and Doug, are too busy with renovations, family, and work to join us in this episode. So please sit back or saddle up and listen and learn about a firefighter, Ewan Williamson. Hey, Denis, how you doing today?
I'm good, Paul. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, just in the summer groove, camping and renovating, cleaning up around the yard. Just finished waterproofing the deck after washing it and cleaning it all up.
It's impressive.
And you're roasting.
Yeah, I'm roasting down here, and I'm just suffering emotionally from the loss of a very good friend of mine who's a 30-year firefighter. He died from job-related cancer, so it was a pretty rough couple months there. But he's really, been suffering for 8 or 9 years with various types of cancers, and he finally passed on last Saturday morning, and it's been brutal.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah, that's tough. I know you were supporting him as much as you could here for the last few months. And
yeah, I spent a lot of time with him. Had a lot of very deep and interesting conversations. So it was good.
Yeah,
from that point of view.
Job-related cancer. That's the thing. We need to, clean your gear and make sure if you can, get undressed on air so you're not ingesting the products of combustion.
Yeah. Well, when you're it's not the first friend I've lost, but is certainly the best friend I've lost, and it makes you think back on all those occasions in your career where you did things that you know better now and wish you hadn't done, and things you were exposed to that you wish you hadn't been exposed to. And anyway, it's a good opportunity to reflect and really to acknowledge how fortunate you might be to be not afflicted with horrible disease like cancer at this point. They're saying now up to 50% of the population will suffer cancer at some point, and so that's a pretty high number. If you're a firefighter, that's gives you pause to think about your future. That's for sure.
For sure. Also, a couple other firefighter deaths in the news lately. One was struck by a piece of equipment or a piece of apparatus. We don't really know what happened.
Yeah.
I think it was in New York or New Jersey. Critically injured, went for surgery and died. It's unclear what happened, whether it was a hose that came off or a car or a piece of the truck. We're not sure. And then there was another one, firefighter responding to a call in a fire truck, caught the side of a road and rolled. I think it was in the West here somewhere, Midwest. And, so we got to be careful out there, guys. That's why we do this podcast and try not to get hurt at calls or on the way to calls, and prevent cancer by keeping clean. I've got another FDNY tip here. We've been doing these all this year from the FDNY tip book 2024. You can download a PDF online and pass these off. Use them for your training nights. We try to cover one each podcast. So this one here is know your buildings and prepare for the possible, and it sort of relates to our episode this week. So
Yeah, massively
more on
important.
that.
Massively important.
Yeah,
We
exactly.
first time we've ever talked about this, Paul?
I know. That's like we haven't learned new ways to kill firefighters, right? It keeps doing the same thing. Let's see. They're having problems in New York City. This one covers illegal occupancy containing dozens of beds was recently discovered in the cellar of a Queens furniture store. And I've heard about these all over. I remember we went to a house fire in Fort Saskatchewan, and we opened the garage door, and it was a room. It was an additional room that they had people sleeping in.
Yeah.
In this tip here, tip number 23 goes on to say large numbers of lithium-ion battery, propane cylinders, and groups of people sleeping have been discovered in the cellars of occupancies in New York City, even though they may be operating contrary to the occupancy type of the building code. Regardless, these situations can place extreme challenges in the event of a fire or for our firefighting forces. We must remain aware, vigilant, and prepared for the possible. Consider these following points. Know the buildings in your response area, which we've said many times, particularly the access or egress points, security features, dangerous conditions, cellar entrances, and access to the rear of the building roof. Use building inspections or drill visits and routine runs for familiarization. I think Doug always talks about it when you're on a medical call is, hey, look around, figure it out when you're visiting there on a medical call in case you're in the neighborhood. Forcible entry at commercial occupancies can be challenging. All members are urged to drill on forcing roll-down gates. Rear doors on commercial occupancies may be heavily fortified because of all the crime and thefts and everything else. So forcing these doors may require the use of forcible entry saws. And consider deploying a search rope in the cellar of commercial occupancies, churches, etc. Maze-like conditions may be created by bedding partitions. This is the knowledge of your response area coupled with training that leads to tactical and strategic superiority on the fireground, and this allows us to safely save lives. And this confusing layout is exactly what we're going to talk about in this week's podcast. This week, we're going across the pond to the UK to an event that occurred in July of 2009. While employed by the Lothian and Borders Fire Rescue Service and attending an incident involving a fire in the basement of a public bar, which also required multiple rescues from the tenement above. So the bar was on the bottom floor and there was 3 stories of apartments above. In the early hours of the morning, a firefighter lost his life. This report is from the Fire Brigade's Union Health and Safety investigators, David Bennett and Andy Fulton. So we're going to Edinburgh, even though the fire service is called Lothian and Borders Fire Rescue Service. It was a local authority fire rescue service that covered 2,500 square miles, or 6,500 kilometers square, in the southeast of Scotland, and serving a total population of 890,000. This was amalgamated into the single Scottish Fire Rescue Service in April of 2013. It was the oldest municipal fire brigade in the UK and the world, founded in 1824 under the leadership of James Braidwood, who later went on to establish the London Fire Brigade. So this is Edinburgh, Scotland. And we've done a few UK ones, and we find they're interesting. The biggest challenge with the UK reports is the terminology they use for their positions. So we may stumble over those and try to explain them as we go through.
I'm glad you acknowledge we only may do that.
The 2013, so the Lothian and Borders Fire Rescue Service, along with the other 7 fire rescue services across Scotland, were amalgamated into the Scottish Fire Rescue Service April 1st, 2013, replaced the previous system of 8 regional fire rescue services across Scotland, which had existed since 1975. The city of Edinburgh, I want to go there one day. We flew over it last fall when we went to England, and I got to look at it through the plane, but I'd love to go visit. Have you been there, Denis?
No, never been. Always wanted to go.
No?
And well, I don't know how much time I got left to go places like that,
We
but
should plan a trip here. Here we go.
we
Yeah,
should. Eh? Like, what the hell's wrong with
we
us?
should. Yeah,
Well, I'm sorry.
exactly.
You got to bleep that
We're
out.
retired. Yeah. Uh,
There's
Edinburgh had a
nothing wrong with us.
population.
What are you talking about?
No, Edinburgh had a population of 506,000 in 2020, making it the second most populous city in Scotland, the seventh most populous in the United Kingdom. The wider metropolitan area had a population of 912,000 in the same year. Now, Denise is going to tell us about this bar. It sounds like a bar, like a lot of bars and a nice place to go, kind of like a Cheers bar by the looks of it. Here we go.
So the bar was located within a stone-built. They call it a tenement, but it's a building, and it's located on the corner of Dalry Road. So Dalry Road is the Alpha side of the building, and Downfield Place. So Downfield Place is another street, and it runs down the Bravo side of the building. So it's right on the corner. So the building is 4 stories high, and it's on this corner lot, as we just mentioned. So the site is not too far from downtown. So, and it's only 10 or 12 blocks from the nearest fire station. So response time was not an issue here. Anyway, the Balmoral Bar, and there's a joke about Balmoral because there used to be a Balmoral Bar in the town where I grew up. And after a number of trips there, my buddy at the time used to call it the Bad Moral. So that was anyway.
Balmoral, isn't that like
Like,
isn't there a castle, Balmoral
there
Castle,
is,
the
there
royals go
is,
to? Yeah,
there is.
okay.
Anyway, Balmoral Bar accommodate was on the ground floor and also included the basement of the tenement, but of the building. But I don't actually believe that the public went into the basement. The basement was kind of the operational area of the bar. And there were 3 floors above, and each of those 3 floors had private dwelling flats, in other words, apartments in North America speak. So the Balmoral Bar was approximately 20 meters wide from the front entrance to the rear wall. So 20 meters, for those who don't know meters, just roughly multiply that by 3. So roughly 60 feet deep. And it was approximately 30 meters wide, so just under 100 feet in width, give or take. So there were 2 emergency exits from the bar. One was at the rear and was on the Charlie side, but in fact it's on the Charlie Delta corner, and on the interior, and almost, and in the interior of the bar was adjacent to the toilets. We're going to explain a little bit about this exit in a minute. So this led directly out into a garden. So really this city block was buildings all around, and in the middle, like the backyards of these buildings, was kind of like a garden, garden greenscape area. So the second emergency exit was at the top of the stairs to the basement, and this escape exited into a common stair and went out into Downfield Place, in other words, the street on the Bravo side. Exit to the basement of the bar was located down the stairwell at the rear of the bar area. The basement extended under the whole of that ground floor bar area, and there was an office located in the furthermost point from the stairs, in other words, out near the Alpha side. And they say an access hatch to the basement was also located outside on Downfield Place. So it's in the sidewalks, kind of like they used to have these hatches where they put coal, they brought like coal hatches. And in this case, in the story here, you're going to find it described as a beer delivery hatch. So they've repurposed it. But let me talk a little bit more about the ground floor of this bar, because it's kind of important. So in the front half of the bar, roughly, was where the patrons sat. So there were tables and chairs and benches and so forth. And then there was somewhat of a divider about halfway back. And on the left side of this divider was the bar service area where they kept the liquor and, had the beer on tap and so forth. And the right-hand side of that went further back. And as you went further back, you went to the gents' toilets, was back on the right-hand side, and the ladies' toilets was back in the middle on the back wall. So again, on the Charlie wall. And between these 2 toilets, there was like a bulkhead, like a closet sort of affair. And in one side of this, you would have access to this exit door that would then take you back into an area, then eventually out into the rear courtyard. But between this divider area where the patrons sat and the very back, there was an opening in the floor where the set of stairs went downstairs. And it looks like, from the pictures I've seen, that you could walk all the way around the top of this open stairs that went down to the basement. So it would be easy to come up those stairs and go left, or go up those stairs and go right, or even possibly to walk entirely past the stairs. In fact, if you were a patron going to the loo, washroom in British speak, you would walk by the stairs and the basement stairs and go past them and go to the loo. So most of you have been in 80, 90, 100 plus year old bars, very similar type arrangement. They're like this. There's a set of stairs somewhere in the back, and that goes downstairs. And sometimes the loo is downstairs, sometimes it's upstairs. In this case, the loo is upstairs. And the exit out to the rear of this bar is not immediately obvious, looking in from the front of the bar. So anyways, separate access to the flats directly above the bar is gained through a tenement stairs that comes in on Downfield Place. Remember, Downfield Place is on the Bravo side of the building. So you go in a door, and there's a bit of a hallway, and then you go upstairs to the upstairs. So this common stair gave access to all the floors in this tenement. And there was also access to the rear through a basement passage. So there's a basement passage. So if you went down a set of stairs to the basement, this passageway would take you out to this same rear exit that is in the upper area, just below it. And there's also, I must add, one apartment on the ground floor. So the building is kind of L-shaped. It goes Downfield Place a little ways, and there's a flat in the back of that corner. You'd also access that flat through this back door too. So you went in this door, you were faced with a set of stairs going upstairs, a hallway, and or access to a set of stairs going downstairs. So anyway, 15 flats above the ground floor, 5 on each floor. So this becomes important because actually this turns into a major rescue operation. So not just a fire, rescue. So anyway, access from Dallery Road to the rear is gained through the tenement stair at 172 Dallery Road. So in other words, you wanted to get to the back of the fire building, you had to pass through another building to get to it. So these buildings are just like continuous on the front. There's no alleyways running to the back or anything like that.
So if you're not confused yet, we will help confuse you some more. We will put, of course, the pictures and stuff on our social media feeds, Twitter and Facebook, so you can look at those. They are from the report that we're referring all this from, which is from the British Firefighter Union Service. Okay, now we get into the call. So at 38 minutes after midnight, Lothian and Borders Fire Rescue Service received an emergency call on Sunday, the 12th of July, 2009. The caller stated that the pub, the Balmoral Bar, was on fire. This was further corroborated by a telephone call from the Lothian Border Police Service saying that they had received a call from the bar staff that the place was up in flames. In total, they got 7 calls to the control room reporting the same incident. Upon receipt of the initial call, the control staff mobilized a predetermined attendance, or PDA, of 3 pumps and a turntable ladder to go to this call. So
Which is
pumps and a ladder truck.
Yeah, straight ladder basically is what that is.
Straight aerial, yep.
Yep.
The total number of personnel that were on the initial mobilization was 16 firefighters. Not much really for a 3-4-story apartment building and a bar.
So 4 per truck, Paul, that's what that is. 16 on 4 pieces of apparatus, that's 4 per truck.
Yeah, so well under minimum staffing for a commercial building.
Yeah, actually. And they knew there was a fire. They had multiple calls on this.
Yeah, so the response was minimal, I would say, for this type of fire, which not uncommon in the UK in 2009. I mean, think of Grenfell Towers. The response was minimal, way under what we would expect. Okay. At 042, appliances, which are fire apparatus, 2 of them, 301, 302, arrive. They both pumps arriving at 042. On arrival, it was obvious to the crews that there was a well-developed fire, significant volume of smoke issuing from the Balmoral Bar. Several people were seen at windows in the flats above the bar. The incident commander, which is called the watch, and the watch manager, which is a captain, so he was the watch manager, and they made him IC. Tim Foley made contact with the bar manager, who explained the fire was located in the basement office at the rear of the bar. The watch manager, who was IC, was given a route to the basement from the bar manager down that confusing stairway that Denny was talking about before. You go into the bar, you go to the back, and then there's a stairway that goes down into the basement. 043, another apparatus arrived, number 303, and the turntable ladder arrived. It was deployed to start carrying out rescues from the flats on Dalry Road, which was the Alpha side, and the Bravo side, Downfield Place. It was set up in the corner of Dalry Road and Delfield, and the firefighters began to effect rescues from the tenement flats. This way they could reach both faces of the building from that corner position, which is excellent placement.
Yeah. Also, out of any potential collapse zone, being in the null point between the two walls, right? So another good reason to be there. So.
Big British stone building. It's not going to collapse. It'll burn for days.
Right.
Okay. And then another apparatus, 2 minutes later, arrived, and they established, this is a British thing, breathing apparatus entry control point. It was established near the front entrance of the bar, Alpha side, by 046, and the incident commander committed 2 breathing apparatus teams into the bar to search for and extinguish the fire that was in the basement. These two teams entered the bar with a charge length of 45 millimeter or 1 3/4 hose and a thermal imaging camera. Awesome. Good work for them. The first BA teams committed to the bar were firefighter Carrington and firefighter Williamson. So team 1 and firefighter Smith and Black, team 2. 2 further breathing apparatus wearers from another apparatus were quickly deployed to begin searching the tenements at one Downfield Place. That was the one in behind the bar on the first floor. Team 3 was briefed by the watch manager, Weatherspoon, a different officer, to make contact with the residents in the flats and prioritize for rescue. Another minute later, 047, a first message went on the radio. Incident command, Foley fire within the basement. Working with 6 BA teams and 1 line of hose were in the offensive mode. This message was quickly followed by another message saying, Stage 2 entry control now in operation. So in Britain, that is, they've set up a BA control system, Stage 2 entry control. So they're trying to write down times so they can manage their air management. The last episode we had, they had problems with that. These guys, they do that. Many of the British fires we've done, they do set up a complex entry control system, although in the ones that we've covered, because we covered just line of duty deaths, they were all ineffective in managing the personnel inside the building.
Just Paul, that's not 6 teams, that's 6 guys and 3 teams is what they have in there. So, and you said that this is a British thing of entry control. And it's not really, because that's all we ever did was entry control for BA, guys in BA. So that's
they set it up like they get a sandwich board and they put it right at the door and someone's assigned to it.
Yeah.
So it's a little more than you typically see in North America.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless you're working for Denis.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. At this time, they mobilized a flex duty system, which is like a chief officer, to come from his home to come and act as incident commander. On the receipt of the Stage 2 entry control message, control confirmed make pumps 4. So they're adding more alarms, is what they call it, make pumps 4. So they're adding another pump.
Yeah.
They're going to have, because they had 3, and now they're going to have an extra one.
It's only one more.
Only one more. Control also additionalized an extra pump to be a command support unit. So sort of like a mobile command post or field incident technician to assist command. Major incident unit was deployed and a fire investigation unit was deployed. And they mobilized an extra fire service officer to help us with command. At 52 minutes after, another information message from the first in crew. C. Foley, an ambulance is required. We found a child under the age of 1, conscious and breathing, suffering from smoke inhalation. So that was one of those BA teams. They found a child. Rescues from the flats facing the street are being carried out using the ladder and extension ladders from the ground. Several firefighters rescued an infant from the first floor. Other people were brought down using the ladder. During this period, BA Team 3, that was the guys who were told to go check all the flats, are making through the stairs, making contact and reassuring residents before they can be rescued. Of course, Europe, we know England, they're really big with shelter in place until we can rescue you. So that's probably what they were doing is, stay in there. The stairway was probably smoky and we will come get you as soon as we can. BA Team 3 could not effect any rescues because of thick smoke throughout the common stair. In Europe, only one stairway. The only one way out of your apartments is through the common stairway or out the window.
Yeah. No obvious balconies on this building either, by the way.
Nope. Yeah, just windows. Yeah. So in the bar, BA teams 1 and 2 are experiencing difficulties locating the stairs to the basement, and they are hard to find. We spent half an hour before we started recording here looking at the pictures and figuring ourselves out in this building. So I can't imagine just showing up and like, hey, go look, and it's full of smoke. Zero visibility, a significant amount of heat, confined nature of the area behind the bar. It was very cramped with the presence of a charged hose line. The thermal imaging camera is of limited use because the display and the face masks were constantly sooting up, quotation marks. At one point, Team 2 returns to the point of entry to ask for more information on the location of the stairs. So they couldn't find the stairs to get downstairs to try to fight the fire.
Something else that's important to think about too is we've already talked about the size of this building. It's close to 100 feet wide and somewhere around 50, 60 feet deep. And they need to get to the basement. So that's a fair amount of hose to stretch in. It's not your average pre-connect, where you're going to stretch in, go down a set of stairs and work in the basement, right? So there's a fair bit of line coming in from the alpha side needed. So they're going to be wrestling with I know it's only 45 millimeter line, but there's still a fair amount of line to wrestle through an area with tables and chairs and, bars and all kinds of obstacles, right?
All the obstacles and only 4 firefighters, right?
4 firefighters on 2 BA teams, right? And two other guys going in that rear door on the Bravo side. Everybody else is committed to rescues.
Exactly.
As you'll see later, they take a lot of people off over ladders.
These guys are struggling. So a few more minutes, assistant message sent from 301. That was the first truck in. Make pumps 5. So they're asking for another pump. Upon receipt of this message, control station or dispatch mobilizes a 5th pump, incident support unit, and a BA support vehicle, so like an air truck or something. Inside the bar, BA teams locate the stairs and Team 1 descends into the basement with a line of hose. There's a noticeable rise in temperature when descending the stairs. Team 2 is assisting with the hose to ensure that firefighting team are not hampered when making progress to the basement. Team 2 remains at the door to the stairs and they do not descend, so they don't go downstairs. When Team 1 leaves the stairwell and enters the main basement area, the heat increases again. They use water pulsing into the ceiling, but the fire was not located. So this is a European thing. It's kind of gone away from it now, I think, but it used to be really big. They called it gas cooling, and you can watch all kinds of YouTube videos on it. And they would try to not upset the thermal balance, and they would pulse water into the ceiling area to cool it a little bit, but they didn't really cool it a lot. They were told don't flood it with water.
Yeah. And that's all well and good, if you're talking about one single open space. But we've all been in basements of old buildings. They're usually chopped up. You got a little rooms here and a bulkhead or a partial area there. And so, cooling the ceiling may work in the little room you're in, but is it going to work throughout the entire space is the question, right?
Yeah, in my mind, it's not enough. Yeah. I mean, open that nozzle up and let her rip, but that's just, nozzle forward and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Flow water and advance at the same time.
But keep in mind, your friend. Yeah, but keep in mind they don't generally apply a lot of water in some of these departments, right?
That's true, especially in 2009.
Inch and 3/4. This is actually sounds like a small line, but it's a lot bigger than some departments used at the time.
A few minutes later, it says 20 minutes in now, 0:59. Crew manager arrives and makes contact with command, and he takes command over from fire, and then they take some other firefighters. They examine the downfield place and examine the beer delivery hatch as a means of possible egress into or access to the basement. The incident commander details Commander Forbes, one of the commanders, and his crew to force entry on the beer delivery hatch as a possible access to the basement. Another fire officer was mobilized as a safety officer, and another officer was mobilized as a logistical support officer. So they're building their command staff. So that's really important. That's really good. I teach incident command, and so they got safety, they got logistics. They're going to be here for a while, and they've got a team working on forcible entry into this other access point. So that's all good. At 0100 hours, so we're into this for 20 minutes or so, or half an hour, a message was sent. 6 BA, one line in of hose in use, turntable ladder in use. 6 persons have been removed from the building. We're still in offensive mode. Rescuers are continuing from the front of the building. They rescue 5 adults from the first, second, and third floors. All are walked down the turntable ladder. So luckily they were able to physically able to walk down the ladder because they couldn't go through the stairway, the single stairway, right? They're trying to get those here in North America, by the way, single stairs on buildings up to 6 stories. I'm not personally a fan, but that's another red herring that we won't go down.
Yeah, but it's okay. They're going to be built of wood, so it's all good.
That's right. 1:02 a.m. A further message sent. Incident Command Foley. This is a 4-story building, 20 meters by 20 meters. Fire in the basement and ground floor. They have some more appliances arrive. 3 more trucks arrived. So those support units that were coming. 104 incident has been sectorized. So they're making Alpha Bravo sectors or divisions or groups, we would call them. Divisions in this case. One will be Foley, one will be Penman, and Sector 3. And they're doing Alpha Bravo. Let's see, Incident Commander sectorized the incident on the front of the bar, Alpha side. The Sector 2 is the Bravo side, and Sector 3 is going to be the Charlie side in the rear garden. Upon arrival, crew manager, thrower, Duncan, Murray approached the incident commander, Sector 1. They're rigged in BA to make BA Team 4 inside the bar. Team 1 has still not located the fire. After a BA gauge check, they decide that it's time to exit the building. The branch, the nozzle, is left approximately 2 meters into the basement. So they leave the line and they go upstairs to change out their air. They ascend the stairs along with Team 2 and they proceed to exit the bar. Both teams exit the bar at approximately 1:07. Remember, they got the call at 0:38 and they're debriefed by the incident commander. They've been inside for the bar for about 22 minutes. So they got a good work cycle out of their SCBAs. The incident commander takes BA Team 4 to Downfield Place where the beer hatch is in the process of being opened. BA Team 4 sets up a line of hose to cover the hatch. When the beer hatch is opened, volumes of dark gray smoke rise from the beer hatch. The incident commander decides it is not a suitable access point, but the beer hatch is left open. BA Team 1 and 2 change their cylinders on their SCBAs and they are ready to be redeployed. Spare cylinders are supplied. During this period, all the BA wearers remove their flash hoods and open their tunics, their jackets, and they drink water consumed by all 4 of them because they're hot. They've been working in there for half an hour. The incident command takes BA Team 4 back to Sector 1, which is the Alpha side, and they're committed into the bar to from Sector 1 entry control point. BA Team 4 is briefed to proceed to the basement, find the nozzle, and continue to try to locate and extinguish the fire. They enter the bar with a high-pressure hose reel as well for protection. So because the hose line's downstairs, they gave them a hose reel, which are popular in the UK, of course, a high-pressure hose reel jet or nozzle. So probably a 3/4 inch or max 1 inch high-pressure line off of the fire engine. So maximum about 90 gallons a minute, which would be how many liters? 400, 375 liters a minute, something like that. Hey, I sold high pressure trucks and you could ram a lot of water through that little hose with the high pressure. They have a chief arriving now in attendance. Flex Duty Officer Taylor reports to the command unit and is handed his cordon tally and informed command that he would be assuming command after liaising with the current incident commander. BA Team 4 reaches the nozzle in the basement and advances towards the fire. They advance through the beer cellar doors, but do not reach the seat of the fire still. So it's hot, but they haven't found the fire. BA Team 3 exit the tenement stair. So this is the stair that was separate at the back to go upstairs to all the apartments. They make contact with residents on the ground, first and second floors. Another BA team, Team 5, is deployed into the tenement stair they enter the building with resuscitation equipment and an enforcer door opener. They are briefed to enter all the flats to do a secondary search.
So the description there is Team 4 went into the basement and found the nozzle that Team 1 had left. And then they advanced, it says, and they went through the beer cellar doors. So there are walls and doors in the basement. It's not one room, it's divided. And we know there's an office down there also. So that's another room. So we don't know how many actual dividers, dividing walls and doors there were in that basement, and or where the fire was.
Exactly. We don't have a layout of the basement. So the group manager takes charge of the incident, and the previous incident commander is now appointed as Sector 1, so Alpha Side Division, Alpha Division, we would say in English. Let's see, or in North America. At the 0117, BA Team 1, so those are the guys that went in first, are recommitted into the bar. They've been outside the bar for about 10 minutes for a quick cylinder change and a drink of water and a brief cool off. They're asked by Sector Commander if they're good to go. They confirm that they are ready to be redeployed and are briefed to retrace their steps into the basement. They locate the nozzle and continue firefighting. BA Team 1 re-enter the bar with a hose reel jet, or for protection, a small handline. Sector Commander Foley, that's Alpha Sector, takes BA Team 2 around to the downfield place to inspect that beer delivery hatch again. They again consider this as a means of entry. BA Team 2 is unsure about where the delivery hatch leads to and suggests that they are recommitted through the front door instead of trying to go down that hatch into they don't know where in the basement.
Yeah, this hatch is on the Bravo side, but pretty near to the Alpha corner, right? So so kind of at the opposite diagonal from where the basement stairs go down. So you got crews in the basement stairs, kind of back in the Charlie Delta corner, and this hatch is up in the Alpha Bravo corner. And
so they'd be pushing fire at them or spraying water at them, or who knows?
So, probably
who knows which way the flow path is going.
And we don't know what the thinking for leaving the hatch open is. Maybe that the advancing hose line crew would push the fire out that way, because there's really, it's a basement fire, right? So you go down the stairs, you're going down the chimney, right? That's the way for the fire and the gases to come out. And maybe they decided to leave this hatch open in the sidewalk as a ventilation point where they could push fire and smoke and everything out there. And
possibly.
And that would be more successful if it was all one common space, of course.
So they agree, and they are redeployed to the Alpha side entry control point, and the delivery hatch is left open. So they decide not to go down there, but we're going to go back and we'll be on deck, if you will, blue card speak, for the Alpha side as needed. At approximately 1:18 is detailed to break all the windows in the front of the bar. At approximately 1:19, a radio message is passed by the previous incident commander to indicate that BA teams that the windows were about to be smashed. BA Team 4 is still at the nozzle in the basement, and they receive the message, but they do not respond. The bar windows are smashed. The firefighter commented that the temperature inside the bar rocketed up. BA Team 4 makes their way out of the basement and encounter BA Team 1 at the foot of the stairs on their way back in. A short briefing is carried out between BA Team 4 and BA Team 1. BA Team 1 continues towards the nozzle, and BA Team 4 makes their way out of the bar. BA Team 2 is briefed to re-enter the bar, proceed to the basement, assist Team 1. So exactly what they were doing before in fighting the fire. At approximately 1:22, BA Team 2 re-enters the bar. Meanwhile, BA Team 5 has reached the second floor, going up that back hallway. Flat number 2. They discover 2 adults and a young child in distress. The child is given oxygen, and BA Team 5 requests a ladder to be pitched to the rear of the building to effect a rescue. So the Charlie side. A ground ladder is used to remove the family from the building. The BA emergency team, so this is like RIT, is requested by Sector Commander Foley. So 2 firefighters get rigged up in BA and wait at the BA entry control point as a RIT team. Hey, about time. They got how many guys in there, and they finally got a RIT team. Oops, did I say it out loud? Sorry.
But 2 guys only. I mean, Paul, 2 guys.
Can't do much. You need 4 for RIT at least.
And as we're going to find out, they're not really equipped to do anything.
Back at the bar. Sorry, we're Monday morning quarterbacking, but I mean, it's just, you read so many of these and it gets to you. Back at the bar, BA Team 2 are encountered BA Team 1 coming up the stairs from the basement. BA Team 1 could be heard shouting to each other about the heat in the basement. They continue up the stairs past BA Team 2. BA Team 2 states that he hears one of the firefighters from BA Team say 1, so I'm going outside. I am fracked with the heat. He said something else, but I put fracked in there. The firefighter is behind, but in touch with the other firefighter. 129, a message from command, make pump 7 for more BA wearers. So they need more staffing. They want 7 pumps and 1 turntable ladder and a few support units, right? So firefighter Kerrigan, who's one of the BA Team 1 firefighters, exits the bar alone. He's asked where the other firefighter is, and he replies, he's right behind me. I did that once. I exited, and I thought the guy was right behind me, and he wasn't. He was really mad when he got out, Chief Tom Fisher. Anyway, sector controller contacts the firefighter on the radio and stated that he replies, I'll be there in a minute, boss. I think I'm stuck in the toilet. Upon realizing that the firefighter had not exited the bar, the partner re-enters the bar to search for him. The sector chief attempts to stop the firefighter from re-entering the bar, and he crawls in after him without his BA on. The sector commander exits the bar almost immediately due to the smoke and heat. At the same time, BA number 2, who had gone downstairs and passed BA Team 1 exiting, attempts to descend into the basement. They are prevented from descending the stairs because of the heat. They spray water down the stairway in an attempt to cool the area. This makes no difference, and they decide to exit the bar.
Keep in mind, all the front windows are out of the place by now.
Exactly.
And
it's
they've got
rocking and rolling.
Doors open everywhere. So it's a well-ventilated fire at this point.
And it's all wood paneling and stuff in the pictures,
Yeah.
it looks like.
Yeah.
Firefighter Williamson, who is the guy who's missing, says on the radio, I'm still stuck. The sector commander instructs firefighter Williamson to activate his automatic distress signal, his pass alarm or man down alarm. There's no response from Williamson to this message. BA Team 2 encounters firefighter Kerrigan, that's the partner of BA Team 1, at the end of the bar. The 3 BA wearers then proceed further into the bar, searching for the missing firefighter. But as the heat is intensifying, they do not have a hose reel jet for protection, so they stop and they return towards the exit. They do not hear a pass alarm sounding. Immediately upon exiting the bar, BA Team 2 services their BA sets to make themselves available for another entry.
So it's the same teams getting beat up, pretty badly here, but yet they're getting prepared to go back in. There's no discussion in this report about a rehab area or anything like that. And even with the additional pumps they've called, I think their manning is only up to something like 32 for this incident so far.
Pretty skinny for a big fire and all these rescues.
Yeah, plus a couple extra chiefs and stuff. So, not a lot of people on the ground for a 4-story apartment building with a commercial in the basement and first floor. So, yeah, lightly staffed, unfortunately. Anyway, at 01:34 hours, which is almost exactly an hour into the call, there was a message from Pump 325 and said, this is a BA emergency, 325 over, which is equivalent to roughly emergency traffic. It's like a mayday, basically, is what they're saying. So Foley informs the IC Taylor that he has declared a BA emergency, and this message is then passed over the fireground radio. On receipt of the emergency message, Fire Control, which is dispatch, contacts the Scottish Ambulance Service area manager and mobilizes a further pump. So they add another pump on the assignment. So that's another 4 guys, presumably. A line of hose is already set up, so another supply line in Downfield Place. So that's the street that runs on the Bravo side of the building. And a BA team consisting of firefighters Bain and Haston were instructed to direct a water jet down the beer hatch. So that's on the Bravo side near the Alpha corner. So you got teams inside trying to direct water down the stairs to the basement, and another team directing water down the beer hatch. I don't know if this happens exactly simultaneously or not, but it's about the same timeline.
This would be an application for high expansion foam. fill up that beer hatch with high expansion foam if you had a
Yeah.
foam generator.
But again, Paul, you need an undivided space for that to work. I mean, if it goes
Yeah,
goes
yeah.
into a room with a door, great. You've
And
got the
it's
room with the
done.
door full of foam. It does very little else for you, and
This is true.
it's not going to hold the floor up.
I couldn't resist. It was my equipment salesperson thing, just thinking right there, like, hey, there's a good example.
Okay, so park that idea.
Okay.
At approximately 0136, the emergency team, BA emergency team, which consists of 2 firefighters, Colburn and Henderson, they are committed to enter the bar to search for Williamson. They're briefed by Foley, and the likely location of firefighter Williamson was in the toilets at the rear of the bar. There's actually 2 sets of toilets, as I mentioned earlier. There's a ladies' loo on one side of the bar at the back and a men's loo on the other side of the bar at the back. They're not side by side.
You just like saying Lou.
They were briefed by Foley. Anyway, the likely location of Williamson was in the toilets at the rear of the bar. BA Emergency Team 1 enters the bar without any equipment or any means of firefighting.
A RIT team without equipment.
So I don't know that they had much of a conversation with the teams that were beat up and had to leave. So I'm not sure how they ended up going in like that. And 2 guys only, right? So firefighter Black and firefighter Smith returned to Sector 1 entry control point approximately 6 minutes after they exited the bar. They had serviced their BA sets and were committed for a 3rd time into the bar to assist BA Emergency Team 2. So they're going in behind the RIT team, basically. And they're recommitted approximately 2 minutes after the BA Emergency Team 1 went in. But they also enter without any equipment or any means of firefighting. So in North American terms, you'd have Halligans and axes and hose lines. And so what they're saying, or a tick even. So here they're saying they entered without any of that stuff. So,
and a RIT pack. So you have air and a mask and a RIT rope.
Yeah. So we know that one of the BA entry teams who was searching the tenements was actually in with some medical equipment, but these folks entered without that. So I'm not sure what their SOGs sounded like, and we'll hear probably more about that in the recommendations when we get to that. Anyway, both of these teams, which went in 2 minutes apart, so they really weren't that together. Remember, one firefighter lost another firefighter who was immediately following each other. So anyways, both teams were briefed to proceed to the last known location of firefighter Williamson. So the last known location was somewhere in the toilets on the right-hand side of the bar, because the toilets and stairs was on the right half of the bar at the back, and past the gaming machines. So you got lots of obstructions and stuff going on back there. Anyway, BA Team 4 are positioned outside the bar, and they have a hose line with them. And they instructed to provide cover for the BA emergency teams. And to do that, they direct the jet through the broken windows towards the rear of the bar and the toilets, I guess in hope of reaching back the 60 or 70 feet that there is to reach the rear of the bar. It's a long way back and a lot of stuff in the way. At approximately 0139 hours, so a lot of stuff's happening right about the same amount of time, a temporary area manager, which is probably some form of platoon or deputy chief in North America terms. Anyway, his name is Young. He assumes the role of incident commander. General Manager Taylor becomes the operational commander, so he steps back to look after just operations. So it's really only at this point, which is an hour into the call, that a formal ICS structure is starting to be built. General Manager Taylor becomes the operations commander, and the commander for each of the 3 sectors remains unchanged as they were assigned earlier. But none of this is communicated back to fire control. So basically, it was all done face-to-face on the street with no radio confirmation. At least nothing recorded, I guess.
This was a problem. We did another UK incident, Shirley Towers. We did it in season 1 or season 2. And command changed about 5 times upon when senior officers arrived, but they didn't communicate it back on the radio. They would phone dispatch or they would talk face to face. It didn't go over the radio, so really no one knew who was in charge, and that's how they lost 2 firefighters in the building that just got miscounted. And it had weird exits, and they went out on a different floor, and no one knew. So this is a problem in the fire services. Command changes not being communicated to everybody, which is a basic tenet of ICS.
But we know even earlier in this, we told you that when they said make pumps 5, control wasn't even sure what that meant. And so there was a
Yes.
telephone conversation to clarify that there was one or two more pumps needed at that time. So because the incident command support pump was to be counted as being there or not counted as being there. So there was some discussion like that. So kind of indicates a bit of a gap, I guess, in their OGs. Anyway, emergency teams 1 and 2, that's RIT team and 1 and 2 in our terminology, or anyway. They were supposed to meet at the end of the bar. So, that's like halfway back in the building. They proceeded on a left-hand route past the gaming machines. So that would be to the left-hand side of the top of the stairs. And they went towards the rear of the bar and towards the toilet area. And so that's back to the Charlie side. Meanwhile, BA Team 3, who were deployed at the beer hatch, were then redeployed outside, just inside the entrance to the bar. So that's the middle of the Alpha side, with a line of hose. They were instructed to provide cover to the BA emergency teams and to direct their jet towards the rear of the bar and the toilets. So BA Team 4 is recommitted to the bar and is briefed to proceed to the basement then. Now they're going to try and make another attempt to go into the basement to continue firefighting, I guess thinking that will make it a lot easier to find the missing firefighter if they can control the fire. Not bad thinking, but anyway, they make steady progress towards the basement, following the hose and proceeding down the stairs. It's interesting that some teams were unable to enter the basement due to the heat and smoke, but other teams were. So I think conditions were maybe fluctuating a little bit.
Could be.
They make steady progress towards the basement, following the hose that's already there, and they proceed down the stairs. The emergency exit in Sector 3, that's basically in the Charlie Bravo corner, was then identified. So between the toilets, there's an emergency exit, and I guess it hadn't been identified prior to this time. So this is
it's between the two bathrooms behind the gaming machine.
Yeah, it's like I told you, it's inside a bulkhead, so it's not immediately obvious.
Yeah.
So this is at 01:45 hours, more than an hour into the call before they identify that there is an exit out the rear. So I guess that wasn't part of the discussion with the bar manager initially.
360. Nobody did a 360.
Yeah.
No one walked into the back.
Yeah.
In the courtyard.
Yeah. It looks like some steps were missed. Anyway, a ladder is taken to Sector 3 and several rescues are carried out at the rear of the premises. I think we already know that there was an adult and a child, two adults and a child were taken out that way over ladders. And a firefighter is detailed to gain access to the emergency exit, which leads out into Sector 3. So I guess to come in from the outside, basically. This emergency exit is identified as an alternate means of access to the bar. In other words, hey, we could bring a host team in this way or a RIT team in this way or something along
And I think it was heavily fortified. That's what they had trouble getting in there.
That could very well be, yeah. So
there's pictures of it in the there's pictures of it in the report of the gates.
Rear exits in bars are often not public accessible because concerns about patrons slipping out the back before they've paid for their pint or whatever the case may be. Anyway, I'm just going to the toilets and you never come back. So I think they don't like that. At approximately,
we're going to need a pint after this one.
At approximately 01:46, BA Team 5 recommitted to the tenement flats on Downfield Place. So in other words, that door on the Bravo side. And they are tasked to proceed to the second floor and to clear the rest of the flats. So probably they were door knocking earlier and not getting in. But now they're going to have another crack at getting in some of the flats they didn't get into.
We're still doing rescues an hour and 10 minutes after arrival.
Yeah. Anyway, inside the bar, BA Team, emergency team, 1 shouts out that they have found a doorway. Well, and that is a doorway leading to the ladies' toilets. So that's about the midpoint of the Charlie side of the back of the bar. At the same time, BA Emergency Team 2 moved to their right and encounter what they believe to be another doorway leading into the gents' toilets. Well, there is the emergency exit between the two, so I'm not certain which doorway they actually found. So firefighter Smith pushed on this door to the gents' toilets, so it was the gents, but couldn't get it open. Almost immediately, firefighter Colburn shouted out that the floor was about to collapse, so they could feel the floor was getting soft under their feet. That would be because they had a fire in the basement under it. This is a timber interior in this building. As firefighter Smith pushed harder, he felt the door move and felt the floor collapsing below him. At this point, firefighter Smith was then engulfed in flames and partially fell through the floor into the basement. So why wouldn't this door open? Was the floor buckling and holding the door? Was firefighter Williamson behind the door? Because he said he couldn't find his way out. So if he got into the gents and the door closed behind him, that might have been the reason, because those doors push inwards generally. Anyway, so BA Team 3, who had a hose at the entrance to the bar, retreats outside because they hear a collapse, but still they continue to direct their jet of water into the rear of the bar. So they move towards more solid floor at the front. Aided by firefighters Black and firefighter Smith, they scramble away from the collapsed floor. Momentarily, they become separated, but they quickly regroup. However, they are disoriented and do not know which direction then to go in.
147. Another appliance, the BA emergency pump arrives. Firefighter Colburn and Henderson were still left on the left-hand wall just outside the ladies' toilets when the floor collapsed. After the collapse, there was a significant increase in heat. They rapidly make their way out of the bar, keeping as close to the wall as possible. Once at the front bar area, the floor became more solid and they were able to reach the front door. They exit the bar at 148.
They're probably pretty lucky that that floor in that area was in the vicinity of the head of the stairs. So we know
Yeah,
that the floor
stronger.
structure in that area would have been a great deal stronger than the rest of the floor in it. Probably
Yeah.
what saved them.
So firefighter Black and Smith, that was Smith was the guy who fell through the floor, and Black, who saved him, managed to find their bearings using a jet directed into the bar from the outside. That was one of those teams that was shooting water inside, and they make their way out of the bar. They exit the bar at approximately 149.
In other words, somebody's squirting water on them, and they had to figure out where it was coming from.
Yeah, that kept them cool. During their time inside the bar, neither of the BA emergency teams heard an emergency alarm or pass alarm sounding. Both emergency teams 1 and 2 reported to command and the sector chief that the floor had collapsed and it was unsafe to commit BA wearers to that area. BA Team 4, still in the basement, has located the branch, the nozzle, but did not find the fire. The temperature is significantly hotter and they decide to retreat because they are concerned that the fire may be affecting the stairs that they came down into the basement. Firefighter Doig and McGowan, which is BA Team 6, that's a new one, are briefed to enter the bar and take a left-hand route on the ground floor to try to access the toilets at the rear of the pub. They enter the bar with a hose reel jet, and very quickly afterwards, Firefighter Stephen and Firefighter Wilson, BA Team 7, are briefed to take a right-hand route on the ground floor again to try to access the toilets. They're not trying to use the rear entrance, which is odd. Oh, maybe they're still forcing it open. As they proceed on their left-hand route, BA Team 6 meets BA Team 4 exiting the bar. BA Team 4 exit at approximately 1:51, which is the guys that went to the basement.
Yeah, so an hour and a half into the call, almost. Hour and 20 minutes, yeah.
Firefighter Williamson was committed into the bar with firefighter Carrigan at 1:17. Williamson's cylinder contents were recorded at the BA control as 200 bar. His calculated time to whistle, which is time to their bell, their alarm, they call it a whistle in the UK, was recorded at 1:52. At approximately 1:53, BA Team 8 are briefed to enter the bar and proceed to the basement to continue firefighting. They enter the bar with approximately at 1:53, BA Team 8 are briefed to enter the bar, proceed to the basement, continue firefighting. They enter the bar with a 45 mil line of hose and they're assisted by crew manager Gibson and Holmes, BA Team 9. 1:54, an assistance message from the incident support unit, the fire incident technician. Assistant manager Young made pumps 9, so they're asking for more pumps. Upon receipt of this message, fire control immediately mobilized 1 pump, and they're unclear how many additional pumps are required. They lost count. There is a discussion off radio to make pumps 9 includes the one for BA emergency or not. The operators actually phone the FIT, the fire incident technician, to find out how many additional pumps are required. It is confirmed by the FIT that make pumps 9 does not include the BA emergency pump, so they mobilize another pump. Inside the pub, BA Team 6 reach the end of the bar and the gaming machines and try to progress towards the rear of the pub. They're unsure of the condition of the floor as it feels unstable. They're unable to move very far into the rear of the pub, but they attack the fire above them. That's new. On the right-hand side of the bar, BA Team 7 also encounters unstable floor. They cannot progress very far, and they attack the fire from their position.
So they
BA
must
Team
they must
8,
in fact, Paul, have been standing at the edge of the collapse. They must have been,
yeah,
because right
yeah,
outside the bathroom, the toilet, the loo doors was where the floor had collapsed, and
exactly.
so these guys are just past the basement stairs. So that whole section of floor behind the stairs and in front of the toilets was all unstable and it collapsing. I mean, one of the firefighters, Black, I think it was, had actually fallen through the floor.
Exactly. Smith.
Smiths, yeah.
BA Team 8 has proceeded to the basement with a line of hose and follows the existing hose towards the nozzle that was in place already. They progress a further 2 meters into the basement and locate an area of fire about 4 meters in front of them. They attack the fire, but they do not manage to knock it back.
There's two. They got two lines down there now, 2-inch 3/4 lines.
Yep. At 2:02, using the guidance given by some technical bulletin, a 10-minute safety margin is included in the consumption of air calculation. So what they're saying here is basically he should be expiring. His air is expiring. BA Team 6 exit the bar, reports the situation on the floor to the ECO, which was entry control officer. They are sent back with a short extension ladder to attempt to bridge the gap in the collapsed floor. Back inside the bar, they are not confident that any suitable structure remains for them to bridge across to pass, and they pass the ladder to BA Team 7 for an attempt on the right-hand side instead of the left. BA Team 7 decides that it's too dangerous to attempt to bridge the collapsed floor. At approximately 2:09, BA Team 9, another new one, is approaching time to whistle, and they exit the bar shortly after BA Team 6, 7, and 8 also exit the bar. 2:07, they get a telephone message from the FIT to dispatch. We need lots of cylinders required for this incident. They phone fire control. Logistical support officer arranged for full BA cylinders to be delivered to the incident. In Sector 3, at the rear of the bar, so they're outside, that's the Charlie side.
Yep.
At 2:09, BA Team 10 are briefed to enter on a left-hand route to find the gents' toilets.
So they're going to try to go
emergency
in
team-
that back door is what they're going to try and do.
Finally, the emergency exit on the Charlie side is open, and there's an internal door leading to the bar, which is ajar. When they're committed, they are unable to proceed through the internal door because of the floor collapse. They quickly exit the bar. A pass alarm was audible from inside the emergency exit door.
That makes sense because the hallway to that internal door went between the two bathrooms.
The washrooms.
So,
yep,
so if
exactly.
you were in that internal hallway to the exit, you could probably have heard something through the bathroom door. So the bathroom walls, of course, are highly soundproof. You know that from old bars. So.
Right. Right. The window to the left of the emergency exit is identified as a possible entry into the toilets. The window had several layers of security, metal bars, heavy gauge wire mesh, and a heavy steel plate. When BA Team 10 exited the bar, an angle grinder was being used to try to remove the security measures on the window. It is quickly apparent that heavier equipment was required to gain access through the window. At approximately 2:12, the crew of Engine 364 are asked to provide equipment and gain access through the window.
I would remind you that everything that they're using on the Charlie side has to be brought through another building to get there.
Right.
Because there's no direct access. It's not like there's a rescue truck parked right outside of the Charlie side exit. There certainly is not.
Exactly. At 2:20, there's a message that says the last resident of the tenement stair is rescued from the building using the ladder truck. In total, the crews have rescued 15 adults, 1 child, and 1 infant. Firefighter Kerrigan is taken by ambulance to Edinburgh Royal Infirmary. I believe that was the partner of the firefighter that is lost, trapped. BA Team 1. At approximately 2:26, a saw is taken through the stair at Dury Road, the next door tenement, and was used to remove the security from the windows. The crew experienced significant difficulties when cutting through the metalwork. Once the metalwork was removed, the crew still had to cut through layers of plywood, plasterboard, tiles, timber framing. This took approximately 27 minutes.
So that saw was a rotary saw.
Oh, yeah, rotary saw, yeah. BA Team 10 was briefed before the window was open to enter and search the toilet area. As soon as there is an opening, BA Team 10 are ready to be committed. Firefighter Spruill is the first to enter the toilet, immediately encounters Ewan Williamson, Firefighter Williamson, underneath the window opening. Conditions inside the toilet are precarious with significant heat, heavy smoke, and a collapsed floor. Firefighter Waugh enters the toilet to assist. They are restricted in moving because of the collapsed floor and the struggle to move Firefighter Williamson. Two more firefighters, BA Team 11, are deployed to assist. In between the two crews, they finally remove Firefighter Williamson at approximately 3:03. Paramedics are waiting for him to be removed. 3:05 has been taken through the close waiting ambulance. Prior to the ambulance departing, the sound alarm, which was sounding, is removed from his BA. He was taken to Edinburgh Royal Infirmary, pronounced dead at 3:21.
Right. So, one of the strategies for removing a person through a window is to, make a door, right? Cut the window down to the floor, whatever the case may be. But I'll remind you that this building is made from hewn solid stone. So
Yes.
you're not cutting any doorways for this stuff unless you got quite a bit of time and the right equipment to do it. So going through an existing window was really their only realistic option. So
even a Petrogen set or a piercing the nozzle, the abrasive nozzle, whatever they call it, Pyrolance, wouldn't help you here because this is stone.
And Paul's going to put pictures of these this Charlie side entrance, and if you look just to the left of it, you'll see the window where they had to breach to get inside, and it's not as big as you'd like it to be if you were trying to rescue somebody through there, that's for sure. I mean, it's a pretty good sized window, but it's not a doorway.
So, underlying causes that were identified by the investigation: insufficient understanding of the types of emergency and expected outcomes, insufficient understanding of the effects of recommitting BA teams to the bar with minimal rest period between cycles, which led to insufficient assessment of the risk.
So one of the things, and we've talked about this before, one of the things that showed up in a previous incident that we did was firefighters being exposed to high heat environments for significant periods of time. And it's particularly noticeable where you don't provide a good cool down period and the firefighters become overheated. And there was another fire in Europe, in Britain, and it was a clothing store fire, I think that particular one was in. And the firefighters got very hot, and even simple tasks became very difficult because the brain overheats and it's very difficult to make a rational decision. So firefighter Williamson, who was caught in a washroom, and I'm sure by that stage of his life he'd been in many bar toilets over the years, would have understood, how to get out of the toilet, but for some reason couldn't. And so it could very well have been the fact that he was on his second BA cycle into the building and exposed to high heat. It could have been a confusion factor for him, turning right at the top of the stairs instead of turning left, or making a wrong turn, and or being in there and not being able to get out again. So no cool down period, no rehab for the team. When they came out, the BA team was in for half an hour, 35 minutes. Heavy heat conditions, came out and recommitted back in, straight back to the basement. High heat conditions, zero visibility, and he became lost when exiting from the second bottle. So could be a factor.
It was episode 53, published a year ago in July, and it was a hair salon in the UK in a very complex big building.
That's what it was, hair salon.
And
it was a simple thing too. The firefighter got disoriented and lost where he should not have been lost. If he'd have been able to have that, as firefighters, they teach you follow the wall to the left, follow the wall to the right, whatever the case may be, follow your hose line. But you've always got to be able to draw a mental map in your head of how you perceive the space to be so that you can turn around and find it in reverse, right? And if you're extremely tired, overheated, and it's very easy to lose that map and get confused, and might have been a factor in this case. They don't talk about that, but overheating could easily be a factor.
Number 3 here was insufficient understanding of the effects of venting the fire. We talked a little bit about that. The beer hatch was left open. Then they opened all the windows.
Yeah.
Turned out the back door was open.
Yeah.
And so the effect of that with a basement fire, the fire just kept getting more air and more burning while they were in there, and they couldn't get at it with their nozzles because of where the fire was.
So a good possibility that old coal hatch, beer hatch was actually feeding oxygen right to the base of the fire. Good possibility that was occurring. And yes, they said there was smoke coming out, but you might have had, what'd you call it? Bilateral flow going on.
Bidirectional flow path.
Yeah.
Out of one hole. Yeah. So ULFSRI, take the training, tons of free training on their website, Fire Research Safety Institute. Learn all about that. Ineffective briefing and debriefing of the BA teams to pass information about access to the basement, conditions within the bar, the floor collapse, which led to insufficient assessment of the risk by command.
Well, just look at the RIT teams going in with totally unprepared for the conditions they were going to find. And then another team following them in who'd actually been inside. And
the means of escape for the BA emergency teams had successive basement firefighting crews was not effectively maintained. So they didn't have means of escape. They had multiple teams that they had no way out. Those guys, luckily, they got out. It's amazing that they did get out.
Yeah.
They even quoted here, number 6, ineffective cordons and control of the incident ground outside the bar. So we don't know anything about that, but apparently there was issues with everything outside the bar.
Well, it's 1:30 in the morning on a pub night. You can imagine there were more than a few patrons standing around providing free advice. Yeah, issues identified are grouped into areas of underlying causes as follows. Insufficient understanding of the types of emergency and the expected outcomes. So control room staff, which is radio control dispatch, failed to pass on vital information that they had. It did not seek further information of the incident. So there appeared to have not been a lot of information passing back and forth. So anyway, further questioning of callers may have established that a basement fire was involved instead of the whole place is up in fire, or up in flames, I think was how they reported it. Control room staff failed to pass on that cylinders may be involved in the fire. Not sure what cylinders those are.
Maybe they had propane cylinders in the basement, maybe?
They would certainly have had carbon dioxide for powering the bar.
Right.
So I, as a firefighter, though, I can't imagine you not knowing that.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
Resources mobilized were not suitable for the types of emergency at this incident. Failure to establish the types of emergency faced at this incident and insufficient understanding of the expected outcomes meant that resources sent were not suitable or sufficient. I can assume that this means that they didn't have enough air bottles on scene. They only had the one ladder there to do all the rescues. We know that the initial assignment on this is pretty light.
15 rescues by one ladder truck? That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't sound, and like the fact that they had to call and ask logistics to send additional filled cylinders suggests that they actually didn't have a BA support truck on scene. I don't know what the BA support truck was that was assigned, but doesn't appear to be one that I would understand as a BA support truck that has, 50, 60 bottles on it, and maybe a cascade or something to refill bottles.
They didn't effectively staff it right from the start. They had 16 guys for a commercial fire in an apartment building.
Yeah. They were chasing it resource-wise. So
yeah.
Incident commanders who were on scene failed to understand that they were facing two types of emergencies and that the expected outcome required and what the expected outcomes required for both of these incidents. In other words, you had a fire. Worse than that, it was a basement fire, and you had a apartment building on top of the basement and commercial fire. So you had two incidents, right? You had a fire in an apartment building and a fire in a commercial space, and not a simple one either at that. It was a basement. And when we say basement, in fact, we would not call this a basement. We'd call this a cellar. That's what this was.
Yeah, probably.
It was completely underground. And you had a fire in a basement, and there were multiple rescues. So that's the two basically incidents that you had going on here. And they didn't appear to have staffed it that way.
So the recommendations that the report had come up with were based by function. So under operations, in order to satisfy the statutory responsibilities, the Scottish Fire Board must ensure that the Chief Fire Officer plans and delivers control measures for fighting fires and dealing with other emergencies, deliver the expected outcomes in a safe manner. Those plans should be published in the National Risk Reduction Strategy and reviewed annually. I mean, in not so many words here, what they're saying is the fire department and their officers in charge were not set up for this kind of fire. They didn't respond enough. And that is a common problem in fire services where we under resource our response. You get I always say you get two kinds of fire chief: the ones that over respond and the ones that under respond. I was always the over respond guy because I read too many of these reports, I guess. But anyway, that's what this is saying, is that whoever the responsible chief didn't prepare his staff well enough for these kind of a complex emergency.
But the essential steps of this is you need to do risk assessments in your community, right? So you need to identify every individual building that's an exceptional risk, like a hospital or a large care home. And then you would identify that you have a number of other occupancies of a similar risk, like bars where you've got commercial with residential above. I mean, Edinburgh will be full of places like this. This whole street is all first floor commercials with residential above. So that's a type of risk that you should be prepared for, and goes back to what we just talked about. You got two types of incidents going on at the same time.
Where was the recent nursing home fire where 9 or 15 people died?
Yeah, the west coast.
You could write.
Yeah.
You could write the same recommendation. They weren't prepared for the risk that
Yeah.
they had.
Yeah.
It's the same recommendation, and here we are in 2025, and we have the same problems.
Right. So not only do you need to do a risk assessment of your community so that you're staffed and equipped appropriately, you then need to do specific pre-plans for each of your buildings.
Recommendation number 2 was rotation of breathing apparatus crews. The Fire Rescue Service must introduce a safe system of work to ensure that firefighters have suitable and sufficient recovery time between BA wears. For BA activities and ambient temperatures, the recovery period should be at least 28 minutes. They had some study, it was in the report here. This should be extended to 65 minutes for hot fire environments. This safe system of work must also include a method of ensuring and recording that all BA wearers have consumed a liter of water before they're recommitted. Yeah. Here in Alberta, we have you can do 2 cylinders. After 2 cylinders, you have to go get assessed by emergency health services, and they have criteria. You have to sit for 20 minutes or something, and your blood pressure has to drop this much, your pulse has to drop this much, your core temperature has to drop this much, or else you can't go back.
Yeah,
that's a protocol here in Alberta. I don't know,
So around about the time of this incident, even before that, there was a big discussion on how to improve rehab. And one of the things that we started experimenting with back in, I would say, shortly after the year 2000, was methods of cooling firefighters. So we got into these
cooling chairs.
We get into these cooling chairs, and we actually assigned EMS crews, ambulance crews, to rehab, and we would then do all the vitals on the firefighters. And you may have an SOG that talks about, only 2 bottles before you were assessed. Under what conditions, right? So these guys were working under very hot conditions in a cellar fire. So a 1 bottle might be appropriate for that, and to be reassessed. And just taking your hood off and opening your jacket, not enough, in most cases. And it depends on your ambient temperatures and everything else that's going on. But we don't even know that there was a rehab sector set up. We don't believe there was. There was a sector set up. There was a sector set up for servicing air bottles, changing the bottles on the packs.
Changing.
But it appears to be that was the limit of it.
Recommendation 3 is procedures for fighting fires in basements. The Fire Rescue Service should introduce specific written guidance for dealing with fires in basements. The guidance should be in the form of an appropriate operational framework procedure. This should relate specifically to firefighting in basements, and it should examine the hazards, risks, control measures applicable to such incidents. So it's a whole different ball of wax when it's in the basement.
Yeah, and basements suggest that there's a portion of the of that floor that's above the ground line and might have windows or other openings. Cellars are a different animal entirely. And in a lot of older municipalities, I was going to say older cities and towns and so forth, it's not uncommon to have these openings in the sidewalk where you can get access to the basement, and like through an old coal shuttle or something like that. So
I hadn't made that distinction in my mind that because there's no windows, it's a cellar. Yeah, I like that.
yeah, well, there's one way in, right? Down the
Hmm.
chimney.
Yeah, it's basically a confined space. Yeah,
It's exceedingly dangerous. And once you're down there, if you want out, there's only one way out.
yeah. Recommendation number 4, emergency evacuation whistle and roll call. The fire rescue service should establish appropriate procedures to be followed in the event of a serious imminent danger on the incident ground. The fire rescue service should introduce emergency evacuation procedures whilst all emergency operational incidents. The procedures must include a roll call, which is like a PAR, we call it, to ensure all personnel are accounted for and have withdrawn from the risk area. So this would be emergency traffic, evacuate the building. This would be air horn blasts. This would be sounding a lot of the new packs. You can, if you have one of those telemetry things, you can tell all the packs to sound the alarms to get out. All these things.
But there's a number of stages to this. I mean, you've got Maydays, and a Mayday is I'm in trouble, but an all out or an evac, that's a different thing. That's to keep you from getting to a Mayday. But in this case, they did have a BA entry control, which is very much recommended as part of your air management program. Should be there, must be there. And so I'm quite certain that they knew who was in there, and they knew where they were supposed to be, and they knew, and through their calculations, they told you that how much air each guy had and when they should be out. So they had pretty good control that way. But they don't talk in here about number one, in a general evacuation. I don't think they ever did a general evacuation.
No,
they didn't. They just kept recommitting teams again and again and again. And if you're going to do a forced evacuation, we've seen this in other incidents where something is going on. They evacuate the building, everybody leaves, even though crews upstairs doing search and rescue for residents might not be intended to be in that evacuation. So you need to appreciate that, like we said earlier, you've essentially got two incidents going on here, and you need to kind of know that, because you don't want to say something that affects the effectiveness of another incident, the other incident, the rescue incident, when in fact there may not be any direct risk to them at that time. So you got to think.
They should have had another division for the upstairs, but I guess the Bravo division was essentially upstairs because that's where they were coming in and out of.
Yeah. So anyway, the idea here is OGs, practice, training, all of that.
Practice the bad fires. That's what I keep telling anybody that listens, is the fire department's not there for your house fire or your car fire. They're there for the big fire. We need to be prepared for the big fire that is going to be a big emergency and a big event if it happens, like that nursing home fire down in Massachusetts or wherever it was. But Recommendation 5.
But we do kill a distressing number of firefighters in small fires.
We do. In number 5, BA emergency procedures. In the event of a BA emergency, so that'd be a Mayday, the fire rescue service should introduce a method of standardizing information sent to control in order to ensure the appropriate resources are mobilized to the incident. I mean, that should have happened right off. There should have been an ambulance sitting there for this fire. It's a major event. You're evacuating people. You should have had multiple ambulances there. But yeah, it's automatic aid, right?
Easy to anticipate problems at such a fire.
Yes. Recommendation 6, ICCS officer mobilization. In this emergency response, the fire rescue service should introduce a method of mobilizing the nearest available command officers to the scene. And we've said this multiple times. I'm the ICS nerd. You need to be able to staff up your command staff, your incident management team, to anticipate. What if something else would have happened? What if the floor would have collapsed? What if the fire would have got into the second floor? Right? They weren't ready for that. What if a pump would have went down, or that ladder, the one ladder truck quit working because of some micro switch somewhere? That you need command staff to deal with all these emergencies.
But there's nothing we see in this narrative that says that they actually put crews into the Delta exposure basement or crews into the Charlie exposure, which was the side where you had attached buildings. There's nothing in this narrative that talks about
No, it
putting
doesn't talk about
crews
it at
into
all.
these exposures. Did they? I don't
Mhm.
know.
Right.
If it had been my fire, I would have. But if I was
Yeah,
there with
for
3
sure.
pumps and a ladder and 4 floors to evacuate above this, would I have done so? No, because I would have been
Couldn't.
understaffed. So
Yeah.
they're chasing the 8
And
ball on this one, that's for sure.
number 7, information exchange on the incident ground. They should introduce detailed guidance on briefings and debriefings of BA teams so that they get the adequate information from them. I mean, they were only out 10 minutes just in time for a drink of water and change the cylinders.
Yeah, that hooks
Number,
into a previous discussion on that.
yeah. Number 8, identification of firefighters in development. They should introduce a visual indicator that identifies firefighters during the development phase of their training on the incident ground. So this never came up in the descriptions, but maybe some of these guys were rookies and they didn't know, and that caused a problem. We have no idea why this is in here, but it's in the report. Come in. Fire behavior. Here we go. 11. Fire Rescue Service introduce a program of fire behavior training, which includes the maintenance of skills, must include tactical ventilation. So they opened all the windows in the coal hatch, so they opened the stove. I mean, they opened the coal hatch.
Yeah, but they had other options too with cellar fires. In fact, there's something called a cellar nozzle. It was specifically designed in 1890, I think, by a guy by the name of Bresnan, and it's specifically you'd cut a 1 foot by 1 foot hole in the floor and drop your Bresnan nozzle down into it and let that do the work that your hose teams cannot accomplish.
You know, that would have worked perfectly here. They had all kinds of access to the main
Yep.
floor. They could have shoved that through
Yeah.
the floor in 1 or 2 places
Yeah.
and really knocked this fire
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. What we don't know, of course, is whether they knew where the fire was, but a thermal imaging camera should have been helpful in that regard. Also, I would say that you do the same thing as if it was a roof. You cut inspection holes, you see what you find. You're going to find a lot of smoke, that's for darn sure. But to me, there were other ways to tackle this fire, and something they don't even talk about here, although it's certainly implied. You're walking on top of a cellar fire, and a lot of firefighters in the Northeast U.S. will tell you that's a significantly bad idea, because the floor can be, and we discussed another
Yeah.
fire where we lost 2 guys down a
Well,
hole in the floor,
it did
and
collapse.
remember it was this chopped up building, and that was in the U.S. also, I believe.
We've done 2. The one in Seattle, that warehouse, that was the same.
Yeah, it was.
And there was
it was
another
a
one in Pennsylvania.
fire.
We did both of
Yeah.
those with Chief Routley.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pittston, Pennsylvania, 1989. 93.
It was that fire in
Yep,
particular.
yep.
That fire in particular, I'm talking about,
Yep.
where they had a fire in the basement, and it was multiple buildings, front to back, and
Yeah.
anyway, a mess.
But there was
right.
cement poured on top of the.
That would be concrete, lightweight
Couldn't
concrete
tell.
floors.
But here it didn't mention what the floor is made out of. But it's an interesting fire in the UK, trying to cover more than just the United States and Canada with some of these episodes. So thank you for listening to another episode. If you know of any that you want us to cover, by all means, if we can get a report, we'd be happy to do it, as long as it's since 2000. We don't do too many that are before. We're doing a few, but and yeah, let's Hill Street Blues, Sergeant Phil Esterhaus says, let's be safe out there.
Anyway, tragedies, always tragedies is what we're talking about, but they're preventable. So please learn and take care every day. Thank you for listening.